The following are the words of Lou Civello, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers risk their lives to protect our communities and keep our streets safe. These officers are the thin blue line that stands between your family and the criminals that would do them harm. We are your neighbors, protecting your neighborhood. Hold the line. Support law enforcement. Stand with the Suffolk County PBA.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back. Moving right along. As you know, every other week we have with us the president of the Suffolk County PBA. Always great to have Lou on, Lou Civello. We've got so much to talk about. It's almost like a hotbed of issues going on all across the country. But I want to specifically talk about, obviously, Long Island and New York State. But we don't exist in a vacuum. Policing and public safety is so important in this country. But let's say hello. Lou Civello, how are you?
Hey, Tom, doing very well. It's my great pleasure to be with you here again.
You know, Lou, every time you come on, people do comment and things like that, too. And this week we were talking about how lucky we are in Nassau and Suffolk County to live in this county where everything seems to be, and, you know, maybe people will criticize me, somewhat of an even balance. We've got good public safety. We've got good policing. We've got people that are not afraid to go out at night, to go to the shopping malls and so on, to go shopping. You got dads, and I'll be a little bit sexist here, that see their daughters going out to go shopping or maybe whatever. And they understand that we have a police department that protect the people, that work hard and diligently and so on. So it's almost like we're on the outside looking in when it comes to other municipalities. And it's not just New York State that it exists in such greatness, because it doesn't. And we're going to talk about that, I think, specifically today. But I was watching over there in Minneapolis and how people across this country attend services. That's such a wonderful thing, like we do in Suffolk County. Many people go out and go to their temples and synagogues and our churches on a Sunday, and it's what we do in America, and it's such a wonderful, beautiful thing. But what happened in Minneapolis in the city's church was just outrageous. So, of course, a lot of people were asking, and I'll get your comment on this, like, well, why didn't the police respond? And then talking to some folks over there in Minneapolis, and you would probably back this up, Lou, they don't have enough cops anymore. Most of them have left after watching what's going on. How do you combat that? And the people didn't get the services they need. And I'm talking about the church services, but police services to protect them in that facility. Lou?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I mean, it just shows you how broken the system is there. You know, on a place of worship, where you're going to, use your religious rights and to, worship, your God and exercise your right to a free religion. And you have these thugs coming in under the guise of the First Amendment, which the First Amendment does not allow you to walk into a place of worship and to take it over, doing this, and you don't have a police response. And it's because in places like this, like in Minneapolis, you don't have an adequate police force. You don't have people who want to be police officers because they've broken the criminal justice system. They've turned cops into criminals and made criminal heroes. Yeah. And that, we almost had that here. All those things that you described, Tom, all those things we take for granted, safe streets, being able to go to church or synagogue or, whatever you choose to do as far as your faith. We take those things for granted, but none of that happens by accident.
That's right.
Safe streets don't happen by accident. They happen because we fight for those things here on Long Island. We as a community fight for them. We as law enforcement fight for them. We as voters fight for them. We come out and make sure that we hold our elected officials to account here. And the second you stop doing that is when you lose it, right? And that's what's happened. These forces, it's very clear that there are these forces in this country that want to shape this nation to their own purpose, right? Whatever that purpose might be political, it might be economic, but you see what they want. They want socialism, right? They want a criminal justice system that makes heroes out of cop killers. We just saw this week, I'm sure you saw this, Tom.
Yes, I did.
Governor Hochul's primary challenger, the current lieutenant governor, stood side by side with a cop killer Anthony Bottom again.
Anthony Bottom,
that individual, that savage, that assassin, that cold-blooded killer. Making him a hero. You're celebrating him. So, and they're very, very organized, and that's why we need to be organized.
Yeah. And I think that's so valuable. We're going to talk about that too. I want to get through some of this because I get a lot angry. I got angry when I saw that Delgado thing, the lieutenant governor having somebody like that at a fundraiser. I mean, what the message, folks, the message that gives to the public on what do you think about somebody that would viciously and execute police officers the way in which this guy was involved back, I think, in the early 70s of what happened there. And it's just absolutely disgusting. And it's no place anywhere in a civilized society. But going back to Minneapolis, and I would ask you as a police leader, somebody who heads up a great organization, the Suffolk County PBA, and you're very much involved in all different aspects of what's good for the men and women of law enforcement, is how do you then, and this is it's just a hypothesis I'm asking you for, how would you deal with a Jacob Fry if you were in the position you're in right now? Again, anything that you say, I think goes. I mean, I don't even know how I would deal with a Jacob Fry. I mean, you as the professional, how would you deal with that?
Yeah, you need to be able to throw a punch, Tom, and that's a mistake that a lot of us make in labor and in organizing, where our only tool in the toolbox is to go and lobby, and lobbying essentially is begging, right? You go to these elected officials and you lobby, and they only care about one thing: they care about whether or not they're going to have a job the day after Election Day, right? So you need to have some say in that, which means you need political action. You need to be able to spend capital, right, to educate the public about what these people are doing and what it means for their families. You need to get out there and mobilize your people, grassroots organization, right? You need to go door to door and talk to the community and say, hey, this is what this leader, this mayor, this governor is doing to you and your family. This is why you can't get on public transportation. This is why you have to worry about being robbed or your family member being raped, right? You have to do that, and that takes work. That takes work, but that's the only way they respect you, right? In order to have that respect, in order to have that seat at the table, you need to work. So as a labor leader, as a law enforcement labor leader, I organize my people, and it's something that should be done across the state. I come back to the teachers, right, and the level of organization that they have. And I would go back to COVID because you really take the beginning of this decade, right? Right, we're more than halfway through the decade now, but go back to COVID. I'm sure it's a time we all remember very vividly. And how much what happened in public safety at that time, right? We more or less got run over. You had COVID, you had George Floyd. It's when you got bail reform. It's when you had cop killers being released. On the other side of the coin, forced vaccines for our members, right? No medical choices. On the other side of the coin, you had the teachers, right? Where the president of the United States at the time, Joe Biden, was saying, kids are going to go back to school. And the teachers union leader, Randy Weingart, said, no, they're not. And guess what? Schools didn't open. Why? Because, and I'm not opining on whether that was right or wrong, but they were organized. They were able to get their message out. They were able to engage the public. They were able to have the loudspeakers in a free society, which you need. Because when everybody can say whatever they want, the loudest voice is usually the voice that wins. So we need to be loud. We need to be organized. Yes. We need to be engaged. And that is how you combat that, because all of a sudden, even if you can't beat them, even if you can't win that election, even if you can't take that woke elected official and retire them, well, make them work. Make them spend money. Make them have to go door to door because they don't want to do that, right? They are inherently want to lay back and just sail to their reelection. Run primaries, right? Get a moderate candidate on either side of the aisle and get involved in a primary. That is political action. That is how you have a voice. And the next time, 2 years later, 4 years later, when they have to run again, they don't want that fight. No. Instead, they want to come to a rational and reasonable middle ground. But we don't have that here in New York. They certainly don't have it in Minneapolis. You have one party rule getting pulled further and further to the left, which is why you get crazier and crazier laws, right? Like, who would think you would just allow cop killers to go free? Yeah. Who would think that you'd have this bail reform where you would just, take violent criminals and just let them out, right? It's because you have one party rule and you have another side. Most people just want to go to work, do their jobs, pay their taxes, you can't. You have to do a little bit more. You have to be engaged. You have to be voting.
Yeah. I think that what you just said is just a wonderful prescription because I think it needs to be done. You know, I look at the rank and file in Minneapolis, and I know a few. I've actually spoken to a few. You know, Lou, I'm going to say this. They're no different than our Suffolk County cops in terms of their energy and their enthusiasm and their desire to help people. It's just like the rest of the connection is not being made. And they're being run over by a city administration led by Jacob Fry that's on the side of the opposition, in many cases, the criminal element. And it's handcuffing our police departments. And it's a shame because I think they have the same motivation that officers, not just in Suffolk County and Nassau County and New York City. It's just the need to organize and how important that is, and to get the ear of elected officials that know what they're doing, that know what the people want. Because you can't tell me the people in Minneapolis want what's going on right now. You know, this is I guess we used to use the phrase silent majority, and they're there. But unfortunately, you have a mayor that's doing what they did. You know, what's happening right now, what you and I are talking about right now, I get this feeling now, this organization I did want to talk to you about, the New York State Public Safety Allowance. Folks, listen very closely to this. It looks like it's going to be it's a budding organization. It's starting. And I'm thinking it's starting because of what we're watching all across the country, but also what we could see here in New York. And I'm hoping this is going to be a safeguard to make sure that this misguided stuff that's happening all over, anti-law enforcement stuff that's happening, doesn't happen. Certainly, it's not going to happen on Long Island. I can say that with a lot of assuredness, but doesn't happen throughout the state. Give us the lowdown on how this is an idea and when is it going to come into fruition. I'm talking about the New York State Public Safety Allowance. What say you, Lou Civello?
Yes, so this meeting is going to happen this coming Thursday, and it's going to be unions, law enforcement unions from all over the state. And it's not just police. We're talking corrections, sheriffs, public safety. This is a coalition of anybody that wears a uniform and anybody that is in the business of keeping the public safe. And we're not going to sit idle, Tom, while public safety is crippled. You know, we have been reaping what was sown, right, since 2020 now, with these woke laws, with this bail reform, with this raise the age. And many people have suffered. Many people have lost their lives because of this. And as public safety professionals, as cops, as law enforcement, we're going to do everything we can to make sure the latter part of this decade is totally different, that public safety is prioritized, that our families' safety is prioritized by these elected officials. Now, that can't just happen in Suffolk County. Right? Yeah, we do a great job here of getting the message out. We use forums like your show, our social media. We're out there. We're active. We're engaged. It's got to happen statewide because what happens in the rest of the state has an effect on us. These statewide bills, there's a bill right now being put forward by a woke assemblywoman over in Brooklyn to put civilian review boards across the state. So her over in Brooklyn knows what's best for us here in Suffolk County, right? It's the hubris of these people. It's been an abject failure in New York City. It's one of the major reasons that you have the crisis you have in New York City. We don't want it here in Suffolk County. This is not a Suffolk County representative, yet she's going to dictate to us, you know, what happens here, what happens in the rest of the state, which is why we have to be involved on a larger scale. That's why we're coming together with these other unions, New York City, upstate. We're going to pool our resources. We're going to pool our collective political power, and we're going to be very involved in this upcoming election. And I'm not saying who we're going to support or what we're going to support, except that we're going to support the people that are going to put your family's safety first.
I didn't want to neglect to say that, yes, what you saw articulated, that it goes beyond police, it's corrections, and a lot of people that are involved in public safety and how this is so important. You know, to me, the amount of attendance that this organization should have and the amount of membership this organization should have when you guys get off the ground should be immense, because we have trouble spots throughout the state that do have the undue influence, like you just said about the member of assembly that wants to create these civilian review boards in areas that they don't know anything about, and how important that is in terms of policing. I think if the energy of what you're saying, and if that's brought in a multitude of ways in an organization like this, it can only be successful. You know, what you articulated just a few minutes ago was what it takes to be successful to make elected officials realize, what their charge is as a public administrator. And I think that's important. And I think we really need to do this. From what you could see, does there seem to be a lot of interest around the state and when your first meeting takes place?
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous amount of interest, and that's why we have so many unions attending this meeting on Thursday. And I'm hoping that the seeds that we sow right now grow into something that really is going to make this a better place to live, and certainly a better place to work for our police officers. We cannot sit idle. We cannot sit on the sidelines. We saw what happened when we did, just a few years ago. Like I said, we were not even at the table. We were cut out when, as you can tell from how insane some of these laws are, we were completely cut out of the equation as law enforcement professionals. And that's why a lot of this got shoved down our throats, this police reform, this bail reform, all of this craziness that we've been living with, all of these poor families, all of the chaos and the carnage that has resulted may have been prevented if we were more organized. And this is that attempt to be more organized. We're not going to repeat history. We're not going to sit idle. We're going to do everything that we can in our power to make sure that the public knows the facts, that we put safety and safe streets, at the top of the list. It's every election time, right? It's one of the top issues. How do people vote? They're either voting their wallet or they're voting, safety. And if you put the two of them together, what's more important? Quite frankly, your safety, right? It doesn't really matter how much you have in your wallet if you can't walk outside your door. And we are the professionals when it comes to public safety, and we're going to make sure that we have a loud voice.
Right. Just underscore, folks, we're talking about the New York State Public Safety Alliance, new organization with first responders and the public safety advocates, including our police departments, corrections, and so on, getting together. I think it's Thursday, as Lou said, on the 22nd. That's what I read about, to start to come up with an agenda. Now, so Lou, can we say that you and I have spoken a lot now over the last couple of years being on the program, and we talk about some of the legislation we'd like to see changed. It's right now it's very stubborn, obviously the dissolution of 50A and bringing that back, obviously bail reform, the anti-defund movements. There are still politicians that talk about defunding, particularly after the controversy that has been created over federal law enforcement and so on. Do you think with more organization, just maybe we could see some of these things go back to where normal is?
I do, Tom. And you've seen the pendulum sort of swing. And it's not because, some of these elected officials had an epiphany and suddenly they back the blue and love the police. It's because they're seeing which way the political winds are blowing, right? And if those winds start blowing in the opposite direction tomorrow, they'll go in the opposite direction. So we have to make sure that we are directing those winds as much as possible. And the way you do that, again, is organization, grassroots, being active, putting your money where your mouth is, educating the public, all of those things. If we do them, if we're engaged, and if we do them on a large statewide level, then yes, I think we can start to put some sanity back into the system here. Yeah. I think maybe we can get that discretion back to judges, right, which was taken away. Yes. We talk a lot about bail reform, it being just a revolving door. We don't talk about how it's just an absolute infringement on one branch of government from the other, right? The judicial branch was more or less kneecapped. You took all the power away from the judges to have any discretion on how dangerous these criminals are, right? We need to return that to our judges. We need that branch of government to be separate and autonomous and be a check and balance. So, that's one of the big things that we want to get done, that 50A, again, protecting our police officers. I see this debate every day about ICE and whether or not they should be allowed to wear masks. They shouldn't have to wear masks. That's the bigger issue here, right? Right. Our police professionals, our law enforcement professionals are to a point where they're being doxxed, they're being targeted in their own homes, right? We should never to be a place. This isn't Mexico where drug cartels run the country and police have to mask, right? Where are the protections for our police officers? Where is the legislation? Till I say, if you target a police officer, we're going to up the crime, right? We're going to put you away for a very long time if you target somebody because they are a law enforcement professional. Those sorts of police bills of rights, police protections, right? We should be passing those here in this state. Right? And then you wouldn't need masks. It wouldn't even be a debate if we passed that nationwide. So those are the sorts of things, injecting that sort of sanity back into the system. I think there is the potential to get some of that done in these next few years.
You know, they'll be very curious when you come back on in a couple of weeks to hear some of the results of this and how this can move forward. We have a very important election year this year that could change a lot. Once again, Lou Civello, president of the Suffolk County PBA, joining us every other week. Always great to hear from you, Lou. Good luck at your meeting this week, and you'll let us know.
Will do. Thank you so much, Tom.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. We're opening up the phones, folks. 1 to 2. We got the phones open. 631-451-1039 when we get back.